When we think of the Middle Ages, our minds usually jump to knights in armor, dragons, and fairy tale castles. But the real lives of ordinary people during this era were often far more compelling, especially the lives of women, whose stories were rarely written down. For a medieval woman, a single day could involve working the fields beside men, managing a household, teaching children to read, or even quietly shaping political decisions at court. All of this happened while navigating beauty standards, fashion trends, and health practices that feel shocking by today's standards. The Middle Ages stretch from the 5th century to the late 15th century, bridging the fall of the Roman Empire and the dawn of the Renaissance. It was a time of massive change. Towering cathedrals rose across Europe, the Crusades reshaped nations, the Black Death devastated populations, universities emerged, and art flourished through illuminated manuscripts. Throughout it all, women lived within strict social limits but still found ways to contribute to literature, politics, agriculture, and family life. Despite the barriers imposed by their gender, medieval women were anything but passive. Their resilience shaped everyday life in ways history often overlooks. Work and education. Most people in the Middle Ages worked the land, and women were deeply involved in agricultural labor. They planted, harvested, tended animals, and managed food production alongside men. Beyond farming, some women worked as writers, artists, healers, and tradespeople, often contributing to family-run businesses. Education was limited, but not entirely closed to women. Noblewomen and nuns frequently learned to read and write and had access to books. Literacy among women, especially in religious communities, was more common than many people assume. Still, formal education like that available at universities was largely reserved for men of the upper classes and the clergy. One of the most remarkable medieval writers was Christine de Pizan, a celebrated intellectual who earned her living through writing and openly defended women's role in society. Her work stands as one of the clearest examples of female authorship in the medieval world. Art, too, was often a family affair. In some cases, women inherited workshops and continued producing manuscripts and artwork, proving that creative authority wasn't always exclusively male. Fashion and beauty. Medieval beauty standards could be extreme. In 15th century France and Flanders, elite women plucked their hairlines to make their foreheads appear higher, a sign of beauty and status at the time. Veiling was common among Christian women, with hair covered by cloths or integrated into elaborate headwear. Since clothing had no pockets, women carried small purses tied around the waist, often decorated and functional. Outerwear was essential, especially in colder regions. The most common garment was the mantle, a cloak-like cape made of wool, fur, or felt, worn for warmth and travel. Women also exchanged symbolic tokens. At tournaments, for example, a woman might gift a veil or fabric embroidered with pearls to a favored knight, an intimate symbol of loyalty or admiration. Health and hygiene. Daily hygiene in the Middle Ages looked very different from today. Showers didn't exist, and bathing required significant effort. Wealthier households sometimes had tubs, while poorer families used buckets and cloths. Baths were infrequent and often reserved for special occasions. Health and hygiene. Daily hygiene in the Middle Ages looked very different from today. Showers didn't exist, and bathing required significant effort. Wealthier households sometimes had tubs, while poorer families used buckets and cloths. Baths were infrequent and often reserved for special occasions. Menstruation was handled with fabric scraps or absorbent natural materials like moss. Women tended to experience fewer periods overall due to frequent pregnancies. Diet was guided by the belief in balancing the four bodily humors. Certain foods were thought to influence fertility, health, and temperament, and moderation was emphasized to avoid moral and physical imbalance. Society and power. Marriage often came early, especially among the nobility. Girls could be formally engaged as children, and marriages sometimes took place as young as 12, largely for political or dynastic reasons. While medieval society imposed strict gender roles, some women pushed beyond them. Joan of Arc is one of the most famous examples, leading armies, shaping national politics, and ultimately paying with her life for defying social and religious norms. Women's freedom varied greatly depending on time and place. In some periods, women managed estates, ran households during wartime, and handled finances. In fact, Women were often responsible for teaching children to read, and in certain regions, female literacy may have surpassed that of men. Women were generally free to leave their homes and move about their communities. Long-distance travel was dangerous, but restrictions were more practical than legal, and escorts didn't have to be husbands. Across Asia, women also lived under religious and cultural expectations, particularly surrounding marriage and motherhood. While customs differed, gender-based limitations were a shared reality across much of the medieval world. As for secret societies or women-only groups, if they existed, they left no trace. Some stories, it seems, remain hidden forever,